We welcome Rahul Singhania, who has got more than 11 plus years of experience in the testing, and he has been associated with us for the past 1 year as a consultant performance testing. Uh, I think Rahul will be explaining more on that. So let me hand over to Rahul.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sushma. Hi, everyone. So myself, Rahul, as Sushma said, like I have around 11 and a half years of experience in total, and my total experience is in performance testing. Yeah. And currently, I'm associated with TestWorks as a senior consultant from past 1 year. Okay, and yep. So I just want this session to be more interactive, yeah, rather than I'm just giving you a lot of gyan and all, yeah. So you guys can ask me anything, any point of time, like if you feel, okay, if there is any doubt or anything. So let me share my screen with you guys, okay, and let me know if you guys are able to see it. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Not yet.
No.
No. Okay. Um, just give me a sec. I'm facing some issue. Just give me a sec. Now it is fine, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think we are already 4 minutes into the session. So I feel let's start with it. Okay. Just wanted to understand from any one of you, like, what do you understand about the performance testing, or any clue, any idea, like what is performance testing? Anyone? I mean, anything is fine. Any answer?
Yeah, it's Soumya here. Yeah, as per my knowledge, like we are going to check like the performance of the applications based on volume, like stress, load, all those different characters.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Anyone else wanna give a try?
Um,
Hi Rahul, this is Aishwarya here.
Stability and response time.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Yeah, hi Rahul, this is Aishwarya here. Yeah, testing made to check the stability of our application.
Yeah, yeah, that's also correct. Okay, so let me give you a bit overview. The performance testing is a software testing process, okay, used for testing the speed, response time, stability, reliability, scalability, resource usage, as you guys said, right? And of a software application under particular workload. Okay, so when I say under particular workload, which means the volume or the load under which we are going to test the application, right? So when we test any application, okay, whether it's a web-based application or a desktop-based application or anything, okay, under such circumstances, okay, just to measure the performance of that website, so we call simply it as a performance testing. Okay, and the main goal of performance testing is not to find out the bugs, right? Because that is mostly covered as part of functional testing or a usability testing, right? So when we do any performance testing, the main objective is not to find out the bugs, but just to eliminate the performance bottlenecks. Okay, if you are getting any functional issue, right, or any data related issue, that will not count under the performance. Okay, and that is actually the prerequisite. If you guys get any application for the performance testing, right, so it is expected that it should be functionally tested. There will be no critical bugs which are in open state. right? And it should be there should be no data related issues or anything, because we are not expecting such kind of issues while doing the performance testing. We just expect the application should be stable, without any sort of functional issue, without any sort of environment issue, without any sort of data related issue. Yeah. And also, I mean, performance testing is actually a subset of performance engineering. Performance engineering is a very big term, where it covers the performance tuning, the performance analysis and all. Okay, that's the next step of performance testing. And performance testing is just a subset of performance, the term called performance engineering. Yeah. And more importantly, the performance testing uncovers what needs to be improved before the product goes to market. Okay, so suppose if any of the application or any of the product is going live, okay, after 2 months or after 3 months, so it so it is must to do the performance testing for that particular application if it is going live for the first time, because we are not sure how it behaves into the production, right? So the main objective is where it performance testing uncovers or improve the product, or it helps to enhance the productivity of that product when it goes live. Without performance testing, the software is likely to suffer from issues, you can say, like running slow, okay, or maybe while several users use it simultaneously. Because when let's take an example of IRCTC. Everyone should be aware of IRCTC application, right? And I'm sure that all of us have booked the tickets via IRCTC as well. So all of us also face the issue, like when we try to book a ticket during Tatkal, okay, the website get very slow, okay, or maybe it got logged out. I mean, the users getting logged out very frequently during that 5 minutes or 10 minutes of spam, right? Because the reason behind this is a lot of users were trying to access the application at the same time. Okay, that's why the application wasn't able to handle that much of load so frequently. So this is one of the live example of performance testing. And apart from that, if you see one more example, I can say, like if there are any big billion days sale on Amazon or on the Flipkart, right? So we can see a lot of traffic into that particular moment, into that application. So sometimes we'll purchase while purchasing a particular product, will go to cart. While doing the payment, our payment got failed. Okay, that is also one of the major challenge, major reasons, because of the performance testing, where the multiple users are trying to access it from multiple various locations, and thus it face similar kind of issues. Okay. So application, let's say, like if any application sent to market with poor performance metrics due to non-existent of or poor performance testing, are likely to gain a bad reputation and fail to meet the expectation sales goals. Like if any application is going live, right, and it is not behaving as expected manner, so maybe the users are doesn't show confidence on that application or that product, right? And they doesn't want to use that product, and maybe they switch to some other product or application, because this is the time, this is the 21st century, when you can see there is a competition in everything, right? If one thing doesn't work, we simply switch to other thing, right? Other applications, or which is more user friendly, um, which is more quick, accessible to our use, right? So that's why, I mean, to cover all those aspects, performance testing is I mean, it's a much needed thing. So I can say a mission, also I'll give you an example. A mission critical applications like a space launch programs or a life saving medical equipments should I mean, should be performance tested to ensure that they run for a longer period without any deviation, right? Okay, so I'll give you an example. I mean, based on a research according to Dun and Bradstreet, okay, 59% of the Fortune 500 companies experienced almost around 2 hours of downtime every week. Okay, so 2 hours, if you feel like 2 hours is a very less thing, but if you try to calculate it, considering the average Fortune 500 companies with a minimum around say 10,000 employees or something, and if each employee is getting a pay of approximately $50 or $60 per hour, so you can see like an organization getting a loss of $896,000 every week. Okay, and it is almost into like $46 million per year. That is only because the performance testing is not properly done. Okay, or some of the organizations not thought to spend much money on the performance testing. So because of that, those organizations are getting uh, they are getting that penalty, or they are getting a loss of that much of amount because of the same thing. And also, maybe you guys are remember or not, I mean, there was in 19th August 2013, there was of only 5 minutes of downtime of google.com. Okay, and that cost the company almost 545,000 US dollars, only for the 5 minutes downtime of that application. Okay, so there are many such examples for that. Okay, if you go and try to search on the google, so there are many multiple examples where you can see like why it is important, and like how we need to do it. So I mean, the overall aspect is that is why the performance testing is important. Okay, and why every application should be performance tested, right? So uh, I'll go. I mean, this is the agenda which we are trying to cover. So this is what the definition, what it says. Performance testing is a discipline concerned with the determining and report. So I'm not very much keen to go through the slides. Okay, so that's why I'm explaining you with the examples and all. Okay, so I think this is we already covered like what is performance testing and why do we need that, right? So again, this is the same thing like verifying whether the system meets the performance requirements defined in SLAs. Okay, SLAs is nothing but the service level agreement. We can discuss the same in detail. Okay, in further slides. Determining the capacity of existing systems. This also covers the definition where I said like performance testing is basically used to measure the response time, speed, stability, and all, right? And resource usage. So all those things cover all these points, like creating the benchmark for future systems. Okay, evaluating degradation with various loads or configurations, right? So anything, any doubt so far? Anything?
No.
Okay, so let's proceed further. So now the next is like types of performance testing, right? So there are various types of performance testing which can be covered, and the objective of each performance testing is different. Okay, so let me give you the couple of examples. The first type of performance testing is called load test. Okay, so load test basically checks the application availability to perform under anticipated user load. Okay, the objective is to identify performance bottlenecks before the software applications goes live. Okay, so this is the major objective among all the different type of performance testing, like just to measure the performance bottlenecks before it goes live, right? So what actually the load testing is, let me give you an example. Suppose if any application came for the performance testing, right? And you have to execute a load test. So load test is basically executed to determine whether the application is able to handle that much of load or not. Okay. Suppose I'm expecting that when my application will go to production, 500 users are going to use that application concurrently, right? So my purpose of load test is to make sure whether my current system is able to handle 500 users load or not, and then under that condition, what is my response time, like how application behaves, whether the response time is quick or not, whether it is behaving up to the mark or not, right? So all those things should be covered under the load test. Okay, next type of testing is stress test. So as the name replicates, stress test. Okay, so under this condition, we'll try to create stress on the system. We'll try to create more, we'll try to put more load on the system so that the system will feel the stress. Okay, and to see how it behaves, right? I mean, I'm sure like during our day-to-day routine, whenever our performance cycles come, right, so we'll get a lot of work from our managers and all. Okay, so that, and there is a time like when we feel lot of stress and lot of work. Okay, so the purpose of that is not to give you um, I mean, not to put you under some circumstances, or maybe, I mean, you can say like that is maybe criteria to check whether you are able to handle that much of stress or not, whether you are able to handle that much of load or not, right? And how you manage your day-to-day work. If I'll increase your daily routine work, you can say for a week or something like that, right? So stress test replicates the same. Suppose if my application is going to handle by 500 users, I executed the same into the load test. Then what I do, I'll try to increase the user load, say by 10% or 20%. Okay, say from 500, I'll try to increase by 550 or 600. Okay, and then I'll try to test the same function using the same infra, just to measure whether my application is able to handle that much of load or that much stress or not. Okay, and one more point is, during the stress test will decrease the think time in between. So think time and all these jargons will come, I'll explain you later. So think time, let me tell you, it's nothing but a time duration between two actions. Suppose maybe if I have to do, suppose if I have to prepare a presentation, for example, and I have to do some office work as well. Okay, so time taken between preparing a presentation and then do some office work is called a think time. Like how much think time you have taken between your two actions, right? So similarly, during stress test we decrease that think time. Like during load test, I thought after each step I'll wait for 1 minute, okay, and then I proceed further. So for stress test, I decrease that think time to say 20 seconds or 30 seconds. Okay, just to measure like how my application behaves. Okay, just to see the worst of my application, right? So all those things will test under the stress testing. So if I'll go by the definition, so stress testing involves testing of an application under extreme workload to see how it handles high traffic or data processing, right? And the main objective of stress test is to find out the breaking point of the system. Okay, when I say breaking point, it means like my application is able to handle 500 user load, which I tested in the load test. So in stresses, I'll try to increase the load by 550 or 600 or 650, just to measure whether my application is able to handle that much of load or it breaks down, or at which particular point it will breaks down, right? So there are a couple of more type of performance testing, like endurance testing. So endurance testing is nothing but it is done to make sure the software can handle the expected load over a long period of time, right? So there are some applications which are live from maybe say 8 hours or 16 hours or like that, right? So endurance tests is basically measure to test whether if I try to test my application for longer period, okay, so whether that application can sustain that much of load or not, right? And apart from that, the main objective of endurance test is to measure the memory related issues. Like if you are using an application continuously for longer period, then definitely memory is something which causes some issue or some errors, right? So the objective of endurance test is to measure whether is there any memory leak or any memory related errors, or maybe your application breaks down in between, right? So all those things we have to measure during endurance test. Another type of performance test is called spike testing. Okay, so spike testing, as the name suggests, spike. Okay, so spike means test the software reaction to a sudden large spike in the load generated by users. Okay, so when I say spike testing, what does it actually means? Suppose if I am gradually I'm increasing the users into my system. Say you can say I'm trying to increase 5 users per second. Okay, till my 500 users will come into the system, but suddenly I increased 50 users at once. Rather than increasing 5 users, suddenly I increased by 50 users or 100 users. I just given a spike just to see like how my application behaves. Okay, so to measure that, the spike testing will generally try to do the spike testing. Then one more important type of performance testing is called the volume testing. Okay, so volume testing is basically uh, used for when you have to process a lot of data, or a good amount of volume, right? Under volume testing, large number of data is populated in a database. So volume testing is also known as batch testing, or the batch job testing, because the batch job is basically done to populate the more number of data. Okay, maybe millions of data from one system to another system, or maybe you have to add data or delete data, right? So you have to measure the time, like how much time it has taken to delete that much of data or to update that much of data into the database, right? So to measure that, we'll generally do the volume testing. So from a performance testing point, there are multiple type of performance test, but there are three major testing, that is load test, stress test, and endurance test. Load test is basically to measure whether my application is able to handle that much of load or not. Okay, that is the 100% load. Stress test is basically used to measure if I try to increase the stress into my system, okay, and when my system will breaks down. So basically it is used to find out the breaking point of the system. And then the endurance test is basically used to measure the memory related issues, right? So I hope everything is clear. You guys ask me anything if you feel okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we proceed further. So next thing, performance testing approach. Okay, so there are two types of approach. One is scalability and another one is stability. So I'm just not going through the slide like what it is written. I'm just taking the topic, right, and I'm just trying to explain you in simple words. Okay, so if you guys want, I'll share the slides with you as well, like in the last, so you can go through it as well. Okay, and if you feel that you are not able to understand anything, just ask me. Okay, so the performance testing approach, basically there are two types of approach for the performance testing. One is scalability and another one is stability. Okay, so the objective of scalability testing is to determine the software application's effectiveness in scaling up to support an increase in user load. Okay, it also helps to plan the capacity addition to your system, to your software, or to your application. So just to explain you, let me take an example. Suppose, for example, if you wanted to test the scalability. Okay, so suppose you have to run 10 kilometers. There is a scenario, you have to run 10 kilometers, but after every kilometer you have to increase your speed by 1 kilometer per hour. Okay, and so how will you, this is basically, this scenario is basically to test your scalability, how scalable you are. So suppose you started running with 5 kilometers per hour. Okay, so when you reach 1 kilometer, you have to increase your speed by now 6 kilometer per hour. So now when you reach till 2 kilometer, you have to further increase your speed by 7 kilometer per hour. Okay, and so on, you have to run in a similar way till 10 kilometers. So what does actually it means, it will try to see how much scalable you are, how much you can scale with the current without giving any extra support, without giving any extra environment. Okay, so how much you can scale. So similarly in into our applications as well. Suppose if we try to test an application, we'll try to scale the users. Maybe we'll start it with 100 users. Okay, we test it for 15 minutes or 30 minutes, it went fine. Then again we increase 100 users. Now we are 200 users into the system. Then again we monitor for 30 minutes, it went fine. Then again we increase 100 users or maybe 50 users, like that, just to measure the scalability of the application, how scalable my application is, and till what point I can scale it, right? And next point is still stability. So as stability defines, like it is basically used to test the stability of the application. Okay, and let me take you the same example. The stability means, again, I have to run 10 kilometers, but here my condition is entire 10 kilometers I have to run with the speed of 20 kilometer per hour. Okay, this will shows how stable I am, whether I'm able to run the entire 10 kilometers with 20 kilometer per hour speed or not. Okay, so this shows my stability. So in terms of performance, so suppose if I have to test any application, suppose I wanted to test my application for 3 hours or 4 hours with 1000 users. Okay, so rather than I'll gradually increase 100, 200, 300, I put all 1000 users at once, and then I'll monitor for entire 3 hours or 4 hours, like whether my application is able to sustain that much of load or not. Okay, this is what stability is. So apart from that, there are some common performance problems, like when we do the performance testing. Okay, so what type of issues we generally face? Okay, so let's take a look into that. So most performance problems is revolve around, you can say, speed, response time, load time, or you can say poor scalability. Speed is often one of the most important attribute of an application, right? A slow running application will lose the potential users, as I said earlier, if any application is behaving slow, right? So you'll not wait. Okay, I mean, like, by the time it will your page will open, you will immediately switch to some other app which is more fast, which is more quick, right? So I mean, this is like how the real time users are. So performance testing ensures an app runs fast enough to keep users' attention and interest. Okay, so just try to understand how speed is a common factor in many of them. Okay, so let's say long load time. So when I say long load time, which means this is one of the common performance problem. Okay, so long load time means, suppose I enter an URL, okay, but it is taking a lot of time to load, or a lot of time to show the login page or the home page, right? So load time is normally the initial time it takes an application to start. They should generally be kept to a minimum. I mean, the best state, the best application should kept your load time as minimum as it can be, right? While some applications are impossible to make load is under a minute, load time should be kept under a few seconds if possible. But if there are some applications which are very heavy, okay, but that took more than 30 seconds or 40 seconds to open, so I don't think, I mean, the real time users can stick to that application, right? Load time is always should be in milliseconds or seconds. Like in these days, if you try to open any mobile app, right, or if you try to open any web app, so if it takes more than 20 seconds, 30 seconds, no one wait till that time. We can generally switch to some other applications or like that. But if it take only milliseconds or seconds, then we'll proceed with the similar kind of app, right? So this is how in terms of performance testing as well. The another common problem we face is poor response time. So response time is the time it takes from when the user inputs data into the application until the application output a response to that input, right? So response time is basically the time interval between the request sent and the response received. Okay, suppose for example, in any application you are searching for some data. Okay, you are searching for anything, and then you have put it enter, and the time taken by the application or the database just to show you the result, like this is what you have searched for and this is what your results, so that is actually called the response time. And this should be quick enough. Like if you can say the Google engine, if we try to search anything via Google engine, it is more quicker. Okay, within seconds it will give you the related links, and everything, right? So this is how the application should be. Another I mean, common problem is poor scalability. As I explained you, the scalability is like to test the scalable, like how scalable the application is, right? So if any application is not that much scalable, okay, and if its scalability is very poor, right? So in under such condition, also we'll try to enhance we'll try to analyze the environment, okay, like the application servers, the web servers, the database servers, right? Like why the application is behaving in such a way, why can't we improve uh, I mean, how can we improve the scalability of that application, right? And most common thing is like bottlenecks. So when I say bottlenecks, which is related to anything, maybe it's a CPU related or memory related or response time related or disk related, right? So we'll discuss this in detail, like what actually the bottleneck is, okay, and what kind of bottlenecks are there, right? So there are some quality aspects, so we'll discuss this a bit later. Okay, so let me first give you more about the uh, like just to give you more about the overview, like what actually the performance testing is and what it actually behaves. Yeah. So so this diagram in front of you basically shows the engagement process. Engagement process means, suppose if you are a performance tester, okay, you are sitting in a performance lab, okay, and then there is a project team. So project team may be anyone, maybe uh, your client, okay, or maybe if you are working for a product team, right? So maybe your own in-house application, or so you can say maybe BAs are also the project team, right? So it can be anything. So this diagram basically defines you how, what is actually the performance engagement process. Okay, you can say the performance engagement cycle. So the very first thing is, suppose if any new application come for the performance testing, so the project team will reach out to you with a query, like this is my application and I wanted to do the performance testing, right? And this is what the timelines and all. So this is what the query represents. So first, the project team will reach out to you with their requirements, okay, and then you will ask, because from the performance perspective there are some certain requirements. So most common issues what generally we face during collecting the requirements is, most of the clients are not actually aware of the performance testing, right? So we have to explain them like what actually we need, okay, what is user load, what is performance testing, what type of performance testing we do, what actually this what this testing will enhance, will give to enhance the productivity of their application, right? So all those things we have to explain them, and then we have to ask them the requirements, like we need the application URL, we need the application details, the, I mean, the infrastructure details, then we need the user load, right? So all those requirements will create one questionnaire and we'll ask them, and then they will respond accordingly, like whatever we have asked, then they will reply to that. But yeah, so this cycle is repeatable. Suppose whatever you have asked, if you and you are not satisfied with their response, and if they are not able to understand like what actually your requirement is, then we can ask them again and again, until and unless we are fine to proceed with our further processes like test planning and all, right? So this process can be repeatable. And if suppose if it is not possible over the emails, then we'll generally, I mean, it's always a best practice, like whenever a query come, okay, before sending a requirement questionnaire, just set up a meeting with the client, okay, and just try to understand their requirement, okay, and over the call only try to ask this is what we need, okay, and then send them a questionnaire over email. So that would help them to understand like what actually we need, okay, and like then they'll give a better response to our questions. Once we have all the responses, then we'll plan a test plan and engagement contract, okay. So once we have all the response, we'll prepare a plan, okay, and we'll send them an engagement contract, like how much time we are going to take. Suppose if it's a big project, right? So we are going to take a month or 1.5 months to complete the performance testing, right? And how much efforts we are spending on it. So those things will come as a part of engagement contract, so those things will share. And once the client will sign that contract, okay, and they will approve our test plan, then we'll ask for the application demo, like what actually the application is, what different type of scripts we have to uh, consider, what different type of flows we have to consider, right? So when we say different type of flows or different type of scripts, so this is nothing but the steps. When I say steps, like take an example of Amazon. If I try to buy something, suppose if I have to buy a mobile phone, so what is the step to buy a mobile phone? First you have to enter the amazon.com, right? Then you have to enter the login details, then you have to search for a phone, then you have to add to a cart, then you have to go to buy and then sign out, right? So this is a complete step for a single flow, that is called buying a phone, right? To buy any product. So similarly, we'll try to find out all the business flow, all based on the application demo. We'll try to find out all the different type of business flows, okay, and all the business critical flows. The one important thing is, there is a possibility like from application wise, the application is very big, Okay, but it's not always possible to consider all the steps or all the functionalities as for the performance testing. As I said, like if you see IRCTC, for example. So nowadays you can see like we can book flight tickets as well and hotel tickets as well using IRCTC application, right? But the main business critical flow of IRCTC is the booking and cancellation of railway tickets, searching of railway trains, right? So this is their business critical application. We can't book these trains or anything via any other application. So this is basically the business critical flow of that particular application. So once client will give us a demo, we have to find out the business critical flow of that application. So rather than doing the performance testing in entire application for entire functionality, because that is time taking and that is not worth it. There is a possibility you are testing some of the functionalities which are not even used by 5% of users or 10% of users into the production, right? So our focus is mainly on those functionalities which is covered by 80% or more users into real time, right? So based on that we'll just define our workflows, okay, and we'll send them like this is what we are going to plan, this is what our business critical flows, and then they will provide us their approval. Yeah, we are fine with that, you can proceed with those critical flows. And if client feels that they want to increase, they want to add up any of the flow or they want to decrease any of the flow, so we can discuss and then we can approve that. The next is once everything is finalized, then we move to the test execution and reporting, where we uh, do our scripting, will we execute our result, I mean we'll do the execution and then we'll do the report analysis and then we'll send the report. Okay, so to the client we'll send the report. So that's why it came here like test execution reporting. Once we have the report, we'll send it to client for review and their final approval. So once the client is happy with those reports, they will send us the feedback and we can call it as a project closer, right? So any doubt on the engagement process, like how we engage with the clients and for any new project which came for the performance testing, any doubt?
No.
Okay, so next thing is performance testing process. Okay, so performance testing process is nothing but a performance testing life cycle. Okay, so for each this is common for each application, like from requirement gathering phase till the execution phase, right? Till the report analysis phase, like what all steps we have to follow and in which procedure, in which manner we have to follow, right? So the methodology adopted for the performance testing can be different, okay, can be anything, but the overall objective of the performance testing will remains the same. Okay, so when I say methodology, there are multiple methodology which are used for the performance testing cycle. Initially I think 8-10 years back we'll started with the waterfall model, which is generally follow for the performance testing life cycle. Then we move to spiral. Okay, so then these days we are using agile or CI/CD, right? Because this is more quick. So you can follow any step, any of the model, but the main objective should remains the same, that you have to find out the bottlenecks while doing the performance testing, right? So it can help to demonstrate that your software system meets the certain predefined performance criteria. Okay, or it can help to compare the performance of two software systems. Suppose if you have a similar kind of software, okay, then you can measure the performance of those two software. But if one of the application is already in the production and you just rather than a new product, you just implement a new functionality, right? And then you have done the performance testing, then you can compare the performance results for both the application, like before the new functionality was delivered and after that was delivered, how whether is there any deviation into the performance or not, right? So those things generally will cover as part of the process. So the very first thing which comes into the performance testing life cycle is to identify your testing environment. Okay, so basically, so to know your physical test environment or the production environment and what testing tools are available. It's really important. Understand details of hardware, software, network configuration, okay, which are going to use during the testing. Okay, it also helps a tester to create more efficient test. Okay, it will also help to identify possible challenges that tester may encounter during the performance testing procedure. So generally, when I say to identify the testing environment, so in 90% of the cases, we generally ask for the production like environment for the performance testing. We generally don't prefer the functional testing environment or development environment, because performance testing is all about the volume. Okay, thousands of volume, the data, millions of data you have to access, thousands of user load you have to execute, right? So the your functional environment and development environment is not enough to handle that much of load. Okay, that are only meant to build the code and just to test the functionality. Okay, so whenever we talk about the performance testing, it should be the environment also as similar to production. One more reason is why, because after the performance testing, once your application will go live, right? So it performance testing is basically to test how the application will behave when it will go live, right? But if you are not testing it on production like environment, then how will you suggest anything, right? So that's why it will also helps tester to create the testing in more efficient way if they understand the environment in very well mannered. And if suppose there are most of the cases where it's not possible to have the prod like environment, because definitely the costs are involved there, because servers are very costly. It's not like very easy to get them. So at worst scenario, we'll try to get the 50% of the production like environment, right? And then we'll try to analyze our workload into that basis. Suppose we are having a 50% of workload, 50% of the environment in production, my application is going to use 1000 users are going to use my application, right? So currently I'm having only 50% of environment. So how I define my scenario, how I write my workload, how I write my uh, test cases, right? So it all depends on that. uh, so I mean, to identify the environment is a very first step, and it's a very big step to be taken care, right? So next comes like identify the performance acceptance criteria. Okay, so performance acceptance criteria, nothing but it includes the goals and constraint for throughput, the response time, the resource allocation. Okay, like against how much user you are going to test that. Okay, how much expected response time. Suppose, because whenever you get the requirement into this phase, into requirement questionnaire, you will also get the expected response time of the application. Suppose there are 8 or 10 different flows. Okay, you always get a response time like my login is expected within 2 seconds, within 5 seconds, right? So we'll get in that kind of expectations as well, because whenever you do a testing, you have to test it against the requirements. Only then you can say your test is a pass or fail, right? Once you have the requirement. So generally in performance terms, if it's a web application, we generally measure the performance should be acceptable when the response time is within 2 to 5 seconds for a static page. If it's a dynamic page, then within 15 seconds should be fine. Okay, and if like if you there is a scenario to upload anything, to upload a file. Okay, so the response time vary from 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Okay, then again it depends on size, whether the size of the document is very small or it's in MB, right? So based on that, your SLA is changed. Okay, so everything we have to design, or you can say define, during our requirement phase. So once we have the performance acceptance details with us, the next is planning and designing of performance test. Okay, so in planning, we generally design like how we use the application. Okay, it is necessary to simulate a variety of end users, plan performance test data outline and matrices that will be gathered. Okay, so I mean, what I mean to say, like planning is basically like what kind of different test flows you have to consider. Okay, what all different type of data you have to be taken care of. Okay, whether it's a tester's duty to create the performance data, or whether it is provided by the development team, because in most of the cases what will happen, uh, the BAs or developers don't provide us the data, because performance testing is all about the data, millions of data, thousands of data, right? And they ask us to create. So we have to understand the process of data creation, like how we create the data, what is the procedure to create the data, right? So just to understand that, and to execute that, right? So all those things comes under the planning. And then in the designing, like, suppose we have finalized with 4 or 5 different flows, right? Then we'll try to design, we'll try to record those scripts, we'll try to do some modification into the scripts, right? So those things will cover later. I mean, that is where the technical part comes under the scenario, while how you record, what are parameters you have to be consider for the designing part, right? Then once you have everything, then next thing is to implement test design and run a test. Once you have scripts, then will next thing is we'll try to execute the test, like and we explained, I mean, we discussed earlier, like the load test or a stress test or endurance test or any other type of test, right? We'll try to execute those tests. Once the report will come, we'll try to understand the report part. Okay, we'll try to measure what actually the performance is, whether the numbers are within acceptable limit or not, right? And we'll try to analyze it. Suppose if my numbers are not within acceptable limit, and we have observed a lot of errors, right? Then we'll try to analyze those errors, whether it's related to environment. So whether it's related to environment, whether it's related to code, whether it's related to application, right? So there are certain areas where we have to find out, we have to investigate whether it's because of high CPU, whether it's memory related. Okay, so there are certain things where we have to look in case of errors or issues, or if we haven't met the expectation, right? So those areas we have to identify, and if possible we have to tune that as well. Suppose if um, I have to test for the 1,000 users, and my application is going to you 1,000 users are going to use my application into the production, right? But I started getting errors within 500 users or 600 users. So I'll try to investigate all the possible reasons for that. I have to look into the environment as well, whether my environment is capable enough to handling 1,000 users or not. If not, then we have to performance tune that, we have to increase the infrastructure. Okay, so those things will comes to the picture while the analysis come, whenever we do the analysis, and we haven't met the expectation, right? And then we'll try to share the report once we have the details, whether test is a pass or a failure. Okay, and we have the details, like based on our analysis, right? So we'll give it back to our client with the results, and then it's their call, like whether they want to proceed. Because whatever we discuss during the requirement phase or the planning phase, suppose we are going to execute 3 tests, maybe one load test, stress test, and one endurance test. Okay, we executed these 3 tests, but we observed issues. Okay, so our main objective is to identify those issues. Okay, and um, try to find out the root cause and to share the results with the client, like we haven't met the expectation from our side, the results is a failure. Okay, and these are the reasons. Okay, then it's their call whether they want to fix it. Okay, whether they want to execute one more round after fixing the test, or not. Because it also includes the extra time, because if there are some issues, then it will require more time to fix those issues. Then again it will require to more time to execute and to repeat those tests again, right? So that comes under extra budget part, and then the budgeting also comes into the picture. So that's all about a separate topic. But yeah, our main objective is to execute the test, just to analyze the results, and give the report to the clients, right? Like let them go through it and let them come back, like what is their understanding on the reports. Yeah, so any doubt on the expectation part, or like the performance testing life cycle? Okay, so
No.
next is quality aspects of the performance. Okay, so there are certain factors which is comes into the quality aspects. There are 5 factors: functionality, usability, reliability, performance, supportability, right? So generally we talk about the performance, and under performance there are 3 major attributes: the performance, effectiveness, and the scalability, right? So when I say performance, so I mean the terms which we are discussing, I mean since you can say last 45-50 minutes, it's the same, like the response time. Okay, how quick my application is. If it's an online application, when I say online transaction, which means whether it's a web based application, okay, or it's a mobile based application, so response times comes to the picture. Okay, if it's a volume testing, okay, so it is also batch, I mean the volume testing is known as the batch transaction, or you can say the batch job testing, right? So under that, you have to update the millions of records or the thousands of record, right? So that comes to the picture, like how much record, I mean how many records you have processed in how much time, right? And then you can test the effectiveness, the what is the CPU utilization whenever you test any application. Okay, so effectiveness is generally comes under your reporting part, like once you executed your load test, you have the results. Okay, so while analyzing, you have to go it through, like what is the CPU utilization. Okay, before test, suppose generally what will happen, suppose if I execute a test for 2 hours from 10 a.m. till 12 noon, for example, right? So it's always best practice to take the utilization, or to monitor the test from 1 hour before till 1 hour after, from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m., right? Because it will give you an idea like how servers were behaving, how was the utilization when there was no load into the server. Okay, and then when you started the test, then how your server behaves for 2 hours. Okay, and once your tests completed at 12, then again you have to monitor for 1 more hour, just to understand whether your servers came back to your normal position or not, right? So it's always a best practice just to measure your performance, at least not possible for 1 hour, then at least 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after, right? Just to measure like how your application behaves, how your server behaves, right? So all these are the different aspects like CPU utilization, memory, network, disk usage. And then scalability is nothing that we discussed just now, like till what point we can scale our users. Okay, whether my application is scalable or not. If not, then how can we make it scalable, right? Okay, then similar the batch transaction comes for the larger transaction volumes and the larger data. So there are some terminologies which is generally used for the performance testing. Okay, so let's cover that, I think. So whenever you try to deal with any of the performance testing project, okay, or any of the performance testing area, so you generally come under some terminologies to understand like what actually it means. Okay, so the first thing is scenario. Scenario is nothing but a sequence of step in application under test. Okay, so when I say sequence of test, the example is given searching a product catalog. As I mean just couple of minutes back, I told you, like suppose if I have to buy a phone via Amazon, right? So what is my step by step process? Like I log into Amazon, I search for a phone, right? I'll go to add to a cart, then I make a payment, and then I log out. So this complete 6-7 steps is called a one scenario, a sequence of steps of an application, right? That is called a complete scenario. Then a workload. Workload is a combination of multiple things, like how many different type of scripts you have to execute. Like in workload there will be a multiple scenarios. Okay, the one scenario is searching a product via catalog. Okay, one scenario may be make a payment. Okay, one scenario may be just compare the two products. Okay, so all these are the different scenarios. So workload is the combination of your user loads, like how much user load you have to execute. Okay, for how much duration you have to execute, how much transactions you have to achieve. Okay, so workload, you can design a workload in a way that all the requirements should be covered. like I have to execute for 500 users, so workload should be for 500 users. If I have to achieve, you can say, 5,000 transactions in 1 hour, so you have to define your workload in a way that you can achieve that workload. Okay, you can achieve that volume. So this is what the workload is all about. The operational profile is the list of demand with frequency of use. It generally comes for the mobile based application. Okay, for the web based application and all, it's not in use. So it is nothing but a frequency of use. You can, like, how much frequency, or you can say latency you are getting it, so against that you have to test it. Next is benchmark. Benchmark is standard workload industry wide. So benchmark is nothing but, suppose if you want to test your application, okay, on a standard, suppose you wanted to make some standard baseline, you can say the standard benchmark of your testing. If you are not aware of the performance, okay, and you just started with your performance testing, right, you first have to benchmark your results. Okay, just started based on the industry wide, like how your application will behave in the industry, right? So you have to first finalize your benchmark in that way. So baseline is nothing but measuring of an existing system performance, like you have already have a baseline for any of the product, and if any new functionality has delivered, okay, then you again test the performance, then you again go through the one more round of performance testing, right? And then you just measure the performance from the existing one. So that's nothing but, which is called a baseline. Concurrency is where the more than two events can occur at the same time, at the same interval of time, right? So where two users are trying to access the same flow. So that's all about the concurrency. Think time, as I said, the time spent between two actions. Okay, so think time, suppose if I'm trying to buy any product, okay, I clicked on login button. After login, I searched for a phone. So time spent between login into an application and then I clicked on next button, search tab, that interval is known as a think time, right? Then again it comes to response time. Response time is the uh, time interval between the request sent and the response received. Okay, so it means your last request sent and the first response received. Okay, this is what the response time is. Then the reaction time. Reaction time is the time taken by the server to react on your request. Suppose for example, you searched for anything over the Google, okay, and you clicked on search. After clicking on search, but the time it has taken to show you those results, okay, this is called a reaction time. Okay, then a turnaround time. Turnaround time is time between the submission of a batch job and the completion of its output, right? You just submitted a batch job and how much time it has taken to complete that request, that is called the turnaround time. Then stretch factor. Okay, the ratio of response time at a particular load to that at the minimal load. So stretch factor is something which is not in use these days. I mean, generally we use around 8-10 years back. So this is something which we can ignore as of now. And this is the graphical, you can say, representation of our terminology, like what actually the reaction time, response time, because generally people confused in between reaction time, response time, think time. Okay, so this just give you an example, like this is user, the first request started, then then this is the point where the request is completed, then system starts execution, then system starts giving the response completed, and user started their second request. So what is the reaction time, what is the response time, okay, so what is the think time? This is all about like how what actually, just to understand your terminology in more better way, right? So I think there are a couple of more topics which I think we can cover into next sessions. Sushma, I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. It was very informative and wonderful session. And thank you, team, for attending this session.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you guys have any doubts, I mean, if you didn't ask, then you can ask Sushma to. I mean, you just collate all the questions and send it to me, okay? And then I'll reply to your queries, or you can reach out to me. You can send me an email directly, right? So I'll try to answer your questions as soon as possible and as quick as possible, right? So any sort of queries related to whatever we have discussed, okay, today, or you may go through the Google, okay, or you may go through the different websites, whichever is preferable, and you can ask me anything. I mean, it would be good like if you guys will ask, okay. So let's see, like, because it will help you to understand like what actually the performance is, and if you guys have interest to learn, then it will really help in future as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so you can keep in touch with Sushma or either me, just to clear all your existing doubts. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, sure. And thank you. Do you guys have any doubt? I think it's no. And thank you, team, for attending this session. And happy weekend, and wish you a Merry Christmas to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
guys, take
Thank
care,
you.
bye bye, Merry
Thank
Christmas
you.
and
Happy
happy
Christmas.
New